Film buff. Hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Film Buffering. I'm one of your hosts, Colter Harkins. I'm here today with Alex Tate and our special guest, Vince Rodriguez.
Be our guest. Be our guest.
He's the star of the now released Final Stop, which you can watch with a rental or a purchase on iTunes, or if you prefer, Amazon Prime or some other services that feature films. You should check it out. All right, this week we're doing a new one, a fun one. It's The Tomorrow War.
Okay, none of you are my child. Has anyone seen Miri?
Aww.
We are fighting a war 30 years in the future.
Is this a joke?
Our enemy is not human.
We need you to fight.
You got drafted.
I will be back.
Why is this happening? What about the teachers' deferment and the veterans' deferment?
If I don't go, they're going to draft you in my place. But if something does happen to me, you and Miri will be taken care of.
If something happens to you, Dan, 70% of draftees do not return.
Sometimes a man does what's best for his family, not himself.
Move your shirt, please.
Wait, what's this for?
It's just a test.
Oh, a seatbelt. Was it a driving test?
No, you don't have jokes in the future?
This device facilitates your jump to and from the future war.
1 minute to jump.
Oh, here, buddy. Take that. You just look around like that.
How are you so calm?
Long story.
Are you ex-military?
Yeah. Kind of a short story, I guess.
3, 2, 1.
In 11 months' time, all human beings in the future will be wiped from the face of the earth. Unless you help us.
I was trying to save my daughter. If I gotta save the world to save her, then I'm gonna do it.
This is the end. The human species will disappear from the face of the earth. We are literally living on borrowed time.
There's still a chance that we can stop this war from ever happening. So we gotta fight.
Well, it's nice knowing you.
The trailer definitely just gave everything away because that's what trailers do. So if you
Alex,
didn't
give us a rundown.
if you didn't fast forward through the trailer, Tomorrow War. Yeah, but it's the Tomorrow War. A family man is drafted to fight in a future war where the fate of humanity relies on his ability to confront the past.
Oh, that doesn't make sense to me. But then, you are very small.
Chris Pratt, J.K. Simmons, Betty Gilpin, Yvonne Stratenhosky, directed by Chris McKay, written by Zach Dean, and it's streaming on Amazon Prime Video.
Well, what are your initial thoughts on this fine film that we have watched this week? Let's start with you, Vince. First time host, first time guest, whatever you are. Give us your rundown.
Thank you guys for having me. But I love time travel, and I love to see everyone's idea and concept of time travel, and there is technically no wrong. So I love to see what their version brought of it, and I personally loved it. Chris Pratt, he did a phenomenal job. I wish I would have saw more of J.K. Simmons. Like, I think he's phenomenal as well, and the small little role that he had in there, I wish he would have been in there more. But No, I like the concept of time travel.
Have a good trip, Einstein. Watch ahead.
Like, the only thing that I have I don't know what you want to call it, but just had an issue with was at the end, towards the end of the movie, when they come back and they're, you know, back from the war or whatever. How come it took his wife to figure out, oh, hey, we could stop these aliens or whatever they were. We could stop them. But she's the only one that figured it out. And he and his little team were the only ones that kind of really went back and were like, wait a minute, we'll go and save the world. And then he goes to the military, and the military's like, nah, bro, we ain't gonna help you, but thanks, you know. I'm just like,
yeah, that was a big
huh.
weird turn for one punchline.
Yeah. So, but leading up to that point, I thought it was an excellent film, and then once it kind of hit that point, I was just kind of like, huh. I was like, well, okay, if that's the route you guys want to go.
There's no earthly way of knowing
He's singing.
which direction we are going.
Alex, what do you think about this one?
I'm gonna take about the exact opposite view of this movie.
Whoa!
I full on hated this movie. Vince hated two things about it. I think I liked two things about it. And those were the aliens were bomb. The aliens were so cool. It must be hard for like creatives to keep inventing like different aliens because there's been so many alien movies, you know?
A stranger from the outside.
Greetings.
But the aliens were bomb, and Chris Pratt, I think it's his best performance that I think I've seen him in. He was very genuine all the time. Like it kind of, you got a glimpse of like his dramatic ability, because it was like an action movie, but there were a lot of like dramatic scenes. I think it is definitely the best I've seen Chris Pratt in a straight dramatic role. He's always good in comedy, obviously, like Parks and Rec.
Because we're smart.
He's been in a lot, but I definitely think this is the performance I liked him best in like a dramatic role. But as far as the movie, oh my gosh, the script was like one of the most predictable scripts I've like ever seen. Like, oh, what a surprise that this colonel that he just met is his daughter. What? I can't believe this. And just like, there's so many problems with it, but I'll stop it at the moment. Let Colter talk about it.
All right, I get to have the middle ground. I will say I actually really did appreciate a lot of elements of this movie. I do think that the alien design was really awesome.
Yeah.
I thought at first when they were not showing them that we were just going to get some weird, they were just non-existent creatures or they're all in shadows or whatever. When they finally do reveal the creature, it was awesome, and they did a really good job with the design. It wasn't too over the top with the CGI. It actually felt pretty realistic for the most part, or at least it didn't take me out of it anytime it was on screen. I thought the action sequences were really well done. There were, I mean, again, a little bit predictable, but at the same time, there was a lot of really good mixture of hand-to-hand and gunfights and different things going on. We got a little bit over the top at times, but I thought that it had a pretty consistent tone in what it was going for. I thought that the comedy was actually pretty well crafted, where it was a little bit tongue-in-cheek and kind of that like 80s style, like action style comedy mixture, where it was self-aware, but it was still pretty funny. And they had a lot of really top-notch comedians as the supporting characters, and so they knew how to land their jokes without playing them too much or too little. So I think they did a good job with that. I do agree that it was a little bit predictable at times, but it was still well crafted. So I don't think that it was like a blockbuster action movie that wasn't trying to be anything but that. So I do appreciate that they were like, this is what we are, and we're going to do it full out and do a really good job of it, and not try to bend your mind with some plot twists or some crazy, I don't know, like Inception-esque kind of style to it. It just was a funny action blockbuster, and I think that they nailed that. I do agree. Chris Pratt was awesome. Supporting cast was really well rounded and did a really great job. And the action was a lot of fun. So I think overall it was a really enjoyable movie. Was it mind blowing in like a script sense? Not at all. But was it fun to watch? I think it totally was.
Albert, I had such a wonderful time with you.
I agree. It was a fun movie to watch. It was predictable, and there were some points that I pointed out where, okay, we saw this coming. You're right. But overall, yeah, like I think Chris Pratt, yeah, he killed it. To be completely honest, I'm like, I enjoyed watching him in that movie. Like, but I mean,
for him to kind of, he kind of turned down where he kind of overreaches on some of his comedy stuff, which feels like he has to be carrying that weight of the picture, and he didn't do that and just allowed himself to fully embody whatever that character needed. So it was nice to see him really allow himself to do that and not try to stranglehold it or whatever to take it over and make it his comedy movie. He let the supporting cast take that on, and that made a stronger film.
I think a lot of the parts with the future stuff too just made absolutely no sense to me. And I know like I know like future is hard to do, and like time travel is definitely hard to do, but there's movies that have done it, I think, way better. Like the reason that they didn't build more time machines is because they were like, oh, it's already held together with bubble gum and string and bubble gum.
I didn't like that line. That was very predictable.
I was like, what? And then they were like, yeah, and as we're moving forward in time is still moving forward, even though we have a time machine.
But that's why I love time movies, because everyone can have their own.
I was like, why can't you build a time machine in the past?
Yeah,
you're like hopping back. Why don't you just build like a bunch of time machines, or like Vince, you were saying, like, why did it take the wife to figure out? Oh, we can kill these things when they get here, or we can like figure out where they land, and like.
Right. And then I'm like, nobody wanted to figure out where they came from. Well, they're like, well, they didn't land here, so we'll just wait for them to come. And I'm like, I was like, that's really what we're going to go with? Like, American government's just going to be like, yeah, we're just going to sit back and.
Yeah.
We're already strapped for cash. It's never like we've overspent in our lives before.
Well, I mean, we all know why they did that. Like, as soon as the dude was like, oh, no, we can't do that. I was like, okay, here comes J.K. Simmons.
Yeah.
I was like, we all knew what was going to happen as soon as the government dude said that. And then they're like.
The third act turn was very weak. I was like, I get that they want to kind of do an homage to like The Thing or like AVP, or like do the Ice World alien sequence that is, I mean, it's cool. It's a good way it works. Alien set the bar high with that, and it just does that bleak, cold world. It's easy to do and to minimize the number of people involved. But it was a weird third act for the movie that was really strong, and actually like, it did give me shades of like a Live, Die, Repeat, or whatever the other name of it is.
Edge of Tomorrow.
Edge of Tomorrow, which
really
is
good.
It was that, but with better aliens, but with not as strong of writing all the way through. Edge of Tomorrow was really good until maybe the very end, which they just kind of had to figure out a way to wrap it up. And I didn't love the aliens themselves, but the overall movie was so strong, where this had other really strong elements, but then it kind of fell apart toward the end.
Well, since we're talking about the third act, okay, so they're like cargo, like they're weapons, right?
Yeah,
that was the idea?
But
they're in little sacks that they can easily escape from. They can all just escape right away from those things. It wasn't like cages that they couldn't get out of, or maybe, I don't know, maybe because the ship was powered down, but it's like, you shouldn't have to, like, the audience shouldn't have to like figure out why they got out so easily. Like,
Right.
it should be explained, or they should just be in cages that they can't get out of.
And if
It's
they're
like,
and it seems like they're a fairly intelligent, even if they're just like a predatorial intelligence, an intelligent race.
Clever girl.
the fight sequence where like J.K. Simmons and Chris Pratt are fighting the like monster queen alien at the end, like hand to hand, and like no one, like the entire race of humanity is wiped out by these things, but J.K. Simmons and Chris Pratt can just like
J.K. Simmons was ripped in that movie.
He was. I love when he jumped on the back. The thing's going like 200 miles an hour. And he's like, jump on your back, kill you. I was like, okay.
Like, my wife definitely.
Pratt does this thing again.
My wife laughed out loud at that part when he jumped on his back. She was like, "What? Did he just?"
Yeah.
It was going like 50 miles an hour, and he just hopped on.
Oh man.
And then they both like after they killed it, right? Exploded or whatever, and they like both lay on the ground, right? And then their like friend, like the other guy, just lays in. He just laid down into frame, and you're like, "Where did this dude come from?" You're like,
but they
oh,
made a joke out of it. I thought that was a nice, like that was that homage to like 80s style self-aware, like make a punchline after you kill a bad guy, kind of a over the top bit. That I thought I didn't like it at first until he like had his little jab. That was like, okay, I get what they're doing with this. It wasn't supposed to be like realistic.
Which jab?
That he like has some line about, oh yeah, I'll just rest here too, or like some like dumb throwaway line. But it was just enough to be like, okay, I get what they're doing with this moment, because you kind of have to get him flop down on the first time he did it. That was dumb. But then the rule of three, the third guy flops down, and you're like, okay.
But I just
about that.
I just don't know how he got there.
But that's the point. Is it was supposed to be kind of a silly bit. It wasn't supposed to be realistic at all.
Well, Coulter, you're giving them credit. No, he wasn't. He wasn't part of the fight at all.
Well, they even did like that. Like is like, oh well, we need somebody that can do this, and Chris Pratt goes, I know somebody, and then they do it again where it's like, oh yeah. I know some, like they did this very self-aware, like the guy that always knows the one person that's perfect for this thing. They like kind of made a joke out of that.
Like the volcano.
It was like self-aware at least. They were totally
a 15-year-old kid to help save the world. Why not?
Yeah. I mean, maybe if I go back and watch it and think of it as like a comedy, but it felt to me like they were being serious.
I can't tell if you're joking or not.
You know that they are making a joke out of what they're doing, and they want you to know that they're like, it only works because of this, but we know that it only works because of this.
To run off that, I think because you got Chris Pratt as your main guy, you can't be 100% dramatic or serious or whatever you want to call it, because if it was J.K. Simmons as the star, then you know, okay, we can run more dramatic or whatever, but so you know it's Chris Pratt, it's going to be a lighthearted comedy to some degree, whether it's saving the world or whatnot. You know what I mean? Like it's.
I think it was in that sweet spot where you had to really get what they were going for, which again I appreciate because I had a feel of what they were trying to do because I watched enough of those movies and enough of them recently to get that tongue in cheek like. Oh, it's like a Walker, Texas Ranger episode. If you guys ever watched any of those back in the day, which Conan used to make fun of all the time because the writing was so over the top. It's like, oh, and there's this kid who happens to have this exact perfect thing, and he's studies karate and he's a computer nerd, and it's like, oh wow, and then that saves the day, and so they kind of tongue in cheek that writing style, and just kind of did a very subtle wink. It was serious enough to make it land if you were taking it too seriously, but you could get the joke if you were in on it.
I was not in on it.
And I don't think everybody will be. And I mean, again, it is a weirdly niche style movie in the sense of a time travel and action comedy and an homage to an earlier day without being to like the Expendables or something like that. But I don't know. It tried to kind of, and I'm trying to say the opposite. It did kind of go for a broad audience at the same time. So it was a little bit of both. I think it did a good job of both ends, though.
Yeah, I respectfully disagree. I just think I think if they wanted to make it a comedy, they should have made it more obvious that it was a comedy, because there's so many dramatic scenes with like crying, and like there was so like they're taking themselves super seriously in the action sequences, and there weren't like crazy. I mean, there was violence, but there wasn't crazy like, you know, like Mortal Kombat violence. I felt like it was they were taking themselves seriously, and I mean,
that alien coming apart at the end was pretty gnarly, though.
That was cool, yeah.
Yeah.
But like you said, like the kid who was like an expert at volcanoes, and then he also had some computer program that could like calculate when the ice would melt in Russia, and it's like,
yeah.
And I mean, I guess, like I said, if I went back and watched it as a comedy, maybe I could. I don't know.
I mean, I don't think it was trying to be a comedy, but I think it was trying to pay tribute to that style of writing, which was a very like late 80s, early 90s style of action comedy writing, which I think was a big influence for Chris Pratt in like helping to shape this movie.
I think that's definitely a possibility, and you could be completely right. I just wish they would have done it more than just the third act, because I feel like the third act is when all that started.
Yeah,
like
yeah,
if they would have had
they
it
definitely
throughout,
played it up the most. Then, yeah,
if they
I would
have
agree
had
with
it
that.
throughout, then I would have been like, oh, okay, this is like the style they're going for, where it's kind of like absurdism type thing.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. And again, like we said, I think the third act was by far the weakest.
You're the weak.
I think that's the problem with time travel, though, is you can have a good idea or a good concept, and then
wrapping it up is always the hardest part.
Wrapping it up is always so hard, because it's like, how do you do something that doesn't exist? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah. How do you veer into the rules of time travel as they are according to like science fiction, like diehards, or you try to simplify it as much as you can? But either way, you're gonna trip yourself up somewhere.
Right. But again, I do appreciate their version of time travel. I had no problem with it.
I like that.
We kind of talked about the directing overall, sound, visuals. How did you guys feel about it?
Terrible. The cinematography was genuinely terrible. They're using the complete wrong lenses on like tons of shots. I don't know if you noticed, but there were so many shots where the edges are like super distorted. Yeah. There's like specifically the classroom scene where he's like talking to his class. So I don't know what exact lens they were using, obviously, but I was getting sick watching it. Maybe that's like a Walker Texas Ranger thing that I don't know.
I don't think about that. Walker Texas Ranger was perfect.
It's practically perfect in every way.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that if he's working on this movie, I'm sure he's very experienced, but I don't know what the heck he was trying to do. It's like we reviewed Army of the Dead, right? And Zack Snyder decided to use these random lenses that made it look like it was shot on an iPhone in portrait mode. So it's like even these experienced guys, like they try new things, even though they're using like, you know, $100 million budget. Like, oh, let's try this new freaking thing. Probably shouldn't, but they obviously
it'll give it a unique style, but maybe it won't work.
To me, it looks terrible.
Oh, I don't know.
Sorry to be such a rain cloud on this one.
I'm just a little black rain cloud hovering under the honey tree.
No. We need to have diversity in our opinions.
But I believe diversity is an old wooden ship that was used during the Civil War era.
Can we talk about the first mission that they got. They like accidentally crashed on top of a roof, right, in Miami.
Did you see?
And the world is like bright orange.
It was
and then
like
the rest of the movie, it's not.
It was like a video game.
Yeah.
It was like, what am I watching? It was like
I didn't understand either when something malfunctioned and then they're supposed to drop 2 feet off the air and then now they're falling
2 feet off
from
the ground.
I was like, what happened?
They're falling from space.
What happens in your time jump?
And then they're like, she's like, go to this medical building and save these people. And Chris Pratt is like, okay, I know exactly where this is.
I'm taking charge because nobody else is trained.
He didn't have a map. He didn't have even anything like, he wasn't even like, oh, over there? Tell me some, like, what does the building look like?
I'm very familiar with the landscape of Miami.
With Miami. He's like, okay, I'll just go downstairs and then I'll go a little bit, down the road a little bit, and then I'll know exactly where it is. And then obviously the people are dead, or I guess not obviously. It would have been cool to have like one of them alive or something, but.
And they didn't even tell him. They were like, oh, we don't want to show you the creatures because then nobody will come. But they didn't say, oh, but when you do see them, shoot them on the belly because otherwise nothing's going to happen.
Right.
There was even a scene where it was like, we're not training you at all. And I'm like,
yeah,
you went back in time. You have like infinite amount of time to train these people. No, we're not even going to give you.
We're not trying to prevent
it. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Oh, and then
we would think they would take some kind of military people, some kind of military personnel, or something. Like we're going to bring a retired ex-military guy.
I'm retired, Oliver.
The sequence where they're like making the thing that kills them. It's just literally like a computer program, like running through all the different variables, and it takes like.
You mean your computer doesn't do that?
It takes like 5 minutes to find 100% match. It's not. Oh my gosh.
Wasn't 23andMe work that fast too?
Oh my god!
You are the father.
Yeah.
And then, sorry, I just have so many things I hated. And then like how obsessed he was with saving the like future version of her. And I'm like, Chris,
oh my gosh!
If you go back and change the future, she won't die here. He literally jumped
the giant pile of aliens coming out of the water.
I will admit that was a really cool shot.
It was a cool shot.
You would you just if he hadn't time hopped out of that, he would have just literally killed all of humanity, and he wouldn't have even
for no reason.
He wouldn't have been able to save her. He's jumping. He didn't have a rope connected to him. He's like jumping to grab her hand. Why?
For no reason.
If he would have grabbed her hand, would she have been able to go back in time with him?
They never specified. I think they had to have the armbands on, and also they talked about how you can't. They were trying to avoid the messing with the space-time continuum by having people that died before the time.
That was cool.
Nobody that was left.
Cool.
So there were some little justifications.
There were little parts of the movie that I think were okay, but overall, I think it was a garbage heap.
Into the garbage, fly boy.
Okay.
Well, on that note, I think it's time that we have to wrap this up. So we got to give it our final thoughts and our rating. Alex, since you've already so clearly expressed your thoughts, no spoilers here. Give us your final thoughts and how many thumbs out of 10 are you giving this movie?
I think this movie, as much as I hate it, is worth watching because the aliens are so cool. They really are, like, I think one of the coolest alien variants that I've ever seen in a movie. I mean, obviously there's tons of movies with cool aliens, but this, I found myself like super excited watching these aliens. And then Chris Pratt was good. J.K. Simmons was not in it much, but he was also always solid. I mean, honestly, I think most of the cast was really good. But the movie, the writing, the cinematography, the script, just overall, I think it was real bad. I'm giving it 3 out of 10 thumbs up.
All right, Vince, what are your thoughts?
Ooh,
And
that's
how many
hard.
thumbs out of 10 are you giving this movie?
I'm gonna go high here. I'm gonna go 7.5 out of 10. It was a very entertaining movie to watch. I think Chris Pratt did an excellent job. I think the cast was amazing. They were funny. The story was easy to follow for the most part, and then kind of got cheesy towards the end. But it kept me watching, and I was entertained. The action scenes were great. I didn't mind watching what the aliens were doing, watching them kill the aliens, and kind of seeing everything unfold, I guess, if you want to say. But I liked it. It was entertaining. I thought it was funny. I laughed here. And then I was following along with the dramatic parts, I love to see him and his daughter, doing it for his daughter. I'm like, okay, that's got a soft spot. But yeah, no, 7.5 out of 10. It's definitely worth watching. I definitely think it was entertaining, and it was a pretty good movie, minus the ending.
Yeah. I agree with you. I mean, it was definitely a flawed movie, but if you're a big fan of that 80s, 90s style Predator, Alien kind of action film comedies, any of the old Arnold Schwarzenegger kind of, or Bruce Willis, Die Hard kind of movies, totally a fun watch. I'm going to give it did what it was trying to do, but I'm going to give it a 7 thumbs out of 10. Not a great movie, but a fun movie to watch for sure. All right. Well, next week we got something a little bit different for you. It is Infinite.
You're not crazy. You never have been. Do you find yourself drawn to places you've never been?
The visions you've had your entire life aren't hallucinations. They're memories.
You're talking about reincarnation.
The legend never die, you get reborn.
We call ourselves the Infinite. We remember skills from all our past lives. It takes 10,000 hours to master a skill. How good would you be after 1,000,000 hours?
Pretty damn good. What do I know that you need so bad?
That's why you're here, to find out.
We have fought one another for centuries. But you can't stop what's coming. The end of all things.
Is he blocked?
Well. We're gonna have to reset your memory.
You're gonna drown me? I got a thing about drowning.
Which is?
I don't like it.
You know what, man? I like you this time around.
Shut up and turn it on. That's perfectly normal.
Kill them all.
There's still time. Time. No more time.
Leap of faith time.
Did you see that?
The legend never die, you get reborn.
Thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate Vince joining us for the show. Again, check out Final Stop if you haven't had a chance yet. Amazon Prime, iTunes, any of those fun sites will get it there for you. We'll see you next week. Have a great one.
Thanks for having me, guys.
See ya.
Farewell, my brave hobbits. My work is now finished. Here at last, on the shores of the sea, comes the end of our fellowship. I will not say do not weep, for not all tears are an evil.
Film buff.